If you've ever been folded in the bottom of a snatch or a clean, or in the jerk had your elbows drop, or just struggled to sit in a strong front rack position, if this has led you to think to yourself, perhaps I'm just not mobile enough for this sport, then this video is for you. Because you've probably done what everyone else has done, including myself. Up to an hour warming up before every session, stretching, foam rolling, banded work, activation drills, the lot. And then after doing this all consistently for months, down the track, you realize that your positions still look the same. Well, I have news for you. After coaching hundreds of lifters across 28 countries and counting, when a lifter tells me that they have a mobility limitation, most of the time they don't. At least not to the degree that they're thinking. And all of this stretching and excessive mobility work is treating a problem that you don't even have. Mobility is an excuse that everyone reaches for. It's usually the first cab off the rank. And I get why. I've done this myself. It is a nice, neat package that can bundle a range of issues together, which is nobody's fault. Saying that your hips or shoulders are too immobile sounds a lot better than saying that you're training a position that you haven't previously. But there is a distinction here. There is a difference between being able to get into that position at all to then being able to own that position under load. When you struggle in a certain position, you're in one of three buckets. Bucket one is true restriction, meaning that your body can physically not get into the position. Even with just an empty bar, even with adjustments, your body just can't get there. The range just isn't there. This is the only bucket where mobility work is the actual answer here. Bucket number two is positional strength, meaning you can get into the position just fine, but the moment there's real weight involved, you can't maintain the position anymore. This isn't an issue of mobility, but it is more of a positional strength issue in the range that you already have. Bucket number three is simply skill and timing. You can reach the positions on its own and perhaps through an easier variation, but you can't find it through an actual Olympic lift. Now, this isn't mobility either, this is technique. An example being, you can find the bottom of a snatch just fine when you're doing an overhead squat, turn that into a snatch, and you just can't quite get there. Now, stretching is a solution to bucket one, and I'm not against stretching in any regard. But what I see from reviewing lifts from all around the world every single day is that most lifters are living in bucket 2 or 3, which is exactly why those mobility routines and apps don't seem to pay off. So what we're going to do today is go through 3 positions that I have personally found that people blame their mobility on the most. And then for each one, I'll give a simple test so you can find out whether you're in bucket 1, 2, or 3 for each of these 3 positions. Starting with position 1, the bottom of the snatch. This is the main one where mobility excuses are made more than any in the sport. Simple test, grab an empty bar, perform an overhead squat and sit in the bottom for 3 seconds before standing. Bar behind the ears, core activated, heels down. If you physically can't get there, even with an empty bar, this is bucket 1, a genuine restriction. And it's always one or two things, either the upper or the lower body, whether it's the thoracic and the shoulders or the ankles and the hips. Typically the ankles or the thoracic mainly. Now let's say you can sit there comfortably with an empty bar, no problem. But as soon as we add a little load here, this is when it all goes to shit. This is bucket 2. And if your overhead squats, even weighted, are still solid, but with a snatch, not so much, we're in bucket 3 territory here. The answer to this one isn't in this video specifically. Last week I did a video specifically on the catch and the snatch. I'll link it in the description. But for the other fixes, for a true restriction, do targeted work on the actual limiter. Here's my rule. The mobility work that you're not loading at all is one that you're going to lose and regress back to the mean. So whatever you open up and put work into in terms of your mobility, you should pair it immediately with some light overhead squats and essentially cash in that range with the barbell in the position that we desire. And for bucket 2, let's treat that bottom position like a strength exercise. Pause and tempo overhead squats are a staple. SOTS presses, and if you can't press in the bottom of the catch just yet, start up higher, from parallel, press there, over time, slowly lower that squat. Now this exercise, from personal experience, does progress faster than you think. Then beyond these, build toward benchmarks that I give my own lifters. Overhead squat your best snatch for a set of 3, and ideally snatch balance it. This was the boat that I was in when I started weightlifting. The bottom position is one of my biggest weaknesses. And initially what I did to try to improve this position was just stretch more. What ended up changing this for me was realizing it wasn't purely about range. It was about owning that range with confidence. Overhead squats, snatch balances, SOTS press, and believe it or not, more snatches over time with an emphasis on catching and holding that bottom position is what got me over the line. On to position number 2, being the front rack position. Now this is all about whether you can hold a comfortable front rack position at all for cleans, front squats, and jerks. To test it, empty bar in your front rack position. Elbows up, bar resting on the shoulders, not loading the wrists and hands while doing this. A full grip, but with relaxed hands. If you can't do this, fingertips are fine as well. Now, if you can't get the elbows anywhere near up, even with an empty bar, this is bucket 1. And the part that people usually get wrong, it's not particularly the shoulders. Usually that restriction in the front rack is either the triceps, the lats, and sometimes the wrists. So I would start with targeted work there as opposed to the shoulders. And while you're building up this position, make some adjustments if need be, like I have myself, with a slightly wider grip, and even adding in some front rack holds or jerk dips are good to further build into this position. But if you find when adding load in exercises such as this, that your elbows begin to drop or your upper back starts to round, this is bucket 2. The fix that I give my athletes is, for 1, pause front squats alongside what I said above with some front rack holds or jerk dips ideally, focusing on building that strength surplus, which will come into play with heavy Olympic lifts. And then of course, if this is all fine, but once you do the actual clean, you start to cave in the core, the upper back, or the elbows drop, this is a technical issue. This is bar path heading backwards, causing you to catch on the heels, late, slow elbows, over pulling. If you check out my page, you'll find I have videos on this topic as well. Position number 3, ending with the squat itself. Now, a lot of this tends to lead to either the ankles or the hips, which for me was one of my biggest limitations, being the ankles. And if anyone out there thinks they are doomed for not having much dorsiflexion, my knee to wall test for my ankles sits at 4 to 7 centimeters from left to right. Now to test it, do a bodyweight squat, flat feet, full depth. Now either put some change plates under your heels or your weightlifting shoes and perform it again. If this slight heel elevation completely changes your squat like it does mine, and then suddenly your chest is upright, your elbows are up, your torso is straight, then your ankles are genuinely a bucket 1 restriction. Now, if your squat looks the same in both scenarios, then you don't have this problem at all. If they're a limiter, address with some light ankle banded work or weighted work over the toes, along with calf work and tempo squats, sitting and getting used to this bottom position with the chest up. And also, if you're watching this without a pair of weightlifting shoes, but with an ankle restriction, this is exactly what the shoes are for. That extra raised heel, I know in my sake of having limited ankle range, goes a long way. Now, if your ankles are fine and you're still losing position in the squat, then adding in this pause and tempo work where you're focusing on keeping the chest or the elbows up depending on what you're doing, trying to keep a strong core throughout. Now, the real caveat answer, because I'm not going to sit here and say that real restrictions don't exist, they clearly do. And I, for one, coach many masters lifters of all age groups, including one that has 2 titanium hips and still competes. Injury history, training history, or years on the clock, of course, can be genuine limiters, and they deserve genuine targeted work. But even then, notice what the answer is. We regress and we adjust the exercise. We don't abandon it completely. And we definitely don't just do vague stretches endlessly and just hope for our problems to be solved. We don't just measure for how many minutes you've spent stretching to see if it helps. We measure the positions, we reassess, and make sure that our lifts are actually looking better objectively. So if you're unsure where you sit, perform these 3 tests and see which bucket you sit in for each one. Do the targeted mobility work. Learn to own the position under load, along as not disregarding your technical quality work. Do all of these and it'll beat doing 60 minutes of stretching before every session, any day of the week. If you want to look deeper into the do's and the don'ts of all the positions across the Olympic lifts, I have a free positional playbook at the top of the description. Covers every position, the snatch, the clean, and the jerk, the do's and the don'ts of each section of each lift, so you can see where your positions need most work. I'll link that at the top of the description. And of course, if you want to go deeper into your weightlifting journey, YouTube has suggested 2 videos here that'll help you further.